So this is my first video in quite some time. I've been sick with tonsillitis and maybe other things, but now I am good today and I will be rattling off my favourite films of the 1990s. And just before I start, bear in mind that this is my personal favourite list of 1990s films. So it might be complete trash to some of you, but just so you know. And so I based this list of the films that I loved when I was living in the 90s, but also ones that I still love today and can get quite a lot of enjoyment out of watching them. And even though I was a young kid throughout all of the 90s, there are a couple of pretty mature films on here, especially the first one on the list. And the way I've ranked the list is by the year that the films were released, except for the number one film, so the last one on this list. That's my favourite movie of the 90s of all time. And so here are my top 10 films of the 1990s. Number 10.
Good evening, Clarice.
Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, you might like your drawings back, Doctor.
Yeah, I told you that I watched some mature films as a kid, and I absolutely loved this film. I was right into horrors and thrillers, but this one is that I still really love today. And actually, in my high school drama class, we had to create a scene from any film, and me and my friend acted out one of the meetings between Dr. Lecter and Starling, which is kind of funny. But yeah, Silence of the Lambs, incredible film.
Dr. Lecter, my name is Clarice Starling. Can I speak with you?
You're one of Jack Crawford's, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Number 9, Jurassic Park. I think out of this entire list, nothing embodies the 90s more than Jurassic Park. You could argue something like Wayne's World captures the 90s, and it definitely does, but Jurassic Park just had this incredible magic about it. And it was such a huge part of popular culture during the 90s, especially with all the merchandise that was released. There's been so many sequels, but nothing has ever come close to capturing the magic of this original film. And if you haven't read the novel that the film was actually based on, then I really recommend it because it's pretty good. But a warning that the main girl in the book, the little girl, is so insufferable that you want her to get eaten by a dinosaur.
Clever girl.
Number 8, True Lies. I honestly think that True Lies is one of the most underrated action films. This was written and directed by James Cameron, and this is just one of the most entertaining films and one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's best. It balances action and humor perfectly, and the set pieces are incredible. There are so many practical effects, which is why it still holds up so well today and looks better than a lot of films that were made decades after this one. Number 7, Dumb and Dumber. I basically had to choose from The Mask, Ace Ventura, and Dumb and Dumber, which all happened to be released in the same year, and are 3 of my favourite films ever. But if I had to chuck on one today, it would definitely be Dumb and Dumber. This is one of Jim Carrey's best films, and I probably laugh more now than when I did when I was a kid watching it. It's perfect.
Most annoying sound in the world. Guys! Fellas.
Number 6, The Shawshank Redemption. This is a pretty dramatic one for the list, and yes, I loved this film when I was 8 years old when it first came out on TV. I remember watching it with my mum and older brother, and I rewatched it over the years, and now after making this list, I'm kind of craving another watch. It's one of the best films ever made, and the actual book which it was based on was written by Stephen King, which I found surprising when I first found that out. Number 5, The Lion King. This was the first film that I ever watched at the cinema, and probably the film I watched the most as a kid. I rewatched it over and over on VHS and had colour-in books and all sorts of merchandise. I loved it so much, and it's still such a great film to watch as an adult. Number 4, Titanic. Whenever anything becomes massive, it always gets its share of detractors, but in my opinion, Titanic is one of the greatest films ever made. The story, the accuracy of the actual disaster, the characters, and just like True Lies, which James Cameron also directed Titanic, the set pieces are unbelievable. I've always had a weird attraction to historic disasters, which might be why I love this film so much as a kid. But even the first act, before the iceberg, I enjoy a lot. And I just watched it recently and I still think it's such an incredible film. Number 3, The Truman Show. I could probably do a whole list on Jim Carrey films, and maybe I will, but The Truman Show is probably his best work as an actor, in my opinion anyway. I can't remember the first time I watched the film, so I don't know how I reacted to any of the twists, but I did watch with a friend recently who had never seen it before, and it was so good seeing his reactions towards some of the events that I had just taken for granted because I already knew what was happening in the film. And it just made me realize how good this film actually is. So if you've never watched it, don't look up anything about it, just go and watch it. Or if you have seen it before, find someone who hasn't and just see their reactions because it's really cool to see.
Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Number 2, The Mummy. The Mummy is one of my favourite films ever. I had a big fascination with ancient Egypt as a kid, but that just turned into a complete obsession after watching The Mummy. For me, this is a perfect action-adventure film, and I watch it every year or so. It's so good.
Priests. Imhotep's priests. Alright then.
And my number 1 film of the 1990s and actually of all time, and one that I'm pretty sure I've watched over 100 times, and it also happens to be another James Cameron film that he wrote and directed, and that is
Hasta la vista, baby.
Terminator 2 Judgment Day. There aren't many sequels that are as good or better than the original, but Terminator 2 is definitely one of them. Arnie is one of my favourite people, but it was T2 where my love for the man started. I can quote so many lines from this film, even lines that barely anyone would know, like, "Hey Gwen, you want some coffee?"
No thanks.
Even though it's action-packed, it's the suspense and slow build-ups to the action which is what makes it work so well. And every sequel that came after it just lacks any of that. In fact, a lot of action films do. And of course, the special effects and the story are just perfect as well. It's Arnold's best film, and I still watch it once a year, either on my birthday or at Christmas.
Now listen to me very carefully.
So that's my 90s films list. I honestly could probably make a top 20 or a top 50 favourite 90s films, but this is my top 10. Did you agree with some of my films? Did you hate some of them? Let me know in the comments. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure to check out my other videos and subscribe if you want to. And yeah, so thanks for watching guys, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye.